China has fired the latest salvo in trade tensions with Canberra, suspending barley imports from Australia's largest grain exporter. Beijing claims pests have been found on multiple occasions in a move that is set to inflame bilateral tensions. It's been dismissed by the company. Joining me live now is Independent Senator Rex Patrick. Thanks very much for your time. What do you make of these latest claims on trade with China? Of course, it follows a second so-called investigation into our wine exports.
Well, there's been a fundamental change in the relationship that we have with China ever since the Prime Minister called on an international inquiry into COVID, which is something that I support. But we need to recognise that there has been a change, and we should be expecting more punitive action. What China is doing is making an example of Australia, and we have to counter that.
So when we talk about what China's doing right now, though, in trade, is the Chinese Communist Party just making things up?
Oh, look, I don't think there's any basis around any of the restrictions they're putting on Australian goods coming into China. I think it is entirely political. It is to be expected. They are making an example of us. What we need to be doing is approaching this in a multilateral fashion. We need to be working with, as the government is doing, countries like Japan and India, also with the United States. It's unfortunate that the United States, in its dealings with China, have been pretty much bilateral. They haven't really rallied an international approach that would be effective in dealing with China as it tries to assert unreasonably its influence.
So, you know, things such as the quadrilateral dialogue will be increasingly important, safety in numbers, some calls to, you know, just ameliorate our language a little bit perhaps. Give China a heads up, for example, is what they claimed is all they wanted for this global inquiry. That surely wouldn't be changing their stance on any of what Australia's pushing for at the moment.
Well, you will recall that over the last 2 years, on 6 occasions, I've tried to get an inquiry up into our relationship with China, looking at what the benefits were and where the pitfalls were, and it wasn't supported. Had we had an inquiry, we could have had a broader ranging approach rather than having to deal with this ad hoc as we are at the moment. We need to adopt a multilateral approach. We certainly need to put national interest first and national security first. We have a situation where, as I said, that relationship has fundamentally changed, yet we are still having a sort of an optimistic approach in relation to the numbers of consular staff that we have around Australia representing the Chinese. So we've got 148 consular staff right around the country, 11 in Adelaide, 10 in Adelaide, when other countries have far fewer nationally. And in Adelaide, the nearest country is Italy with 2, and we perhaps need to be winding that sort of stuff back. We need to re-looking at the relationship.
You're saying limit how many, have repercussions for China, limit how many consular staff they're allowed in Australia, literally start sending some back?
Well, it's excessive at the moment, and we know that China is engaging in political interference. We know that they're trying to influence our politics. We know that they're trying to get access to industrial and university secrets. And we permit that to occur by having a large number of consulate officials here in Australia. There's no question that some of this interference, some of this espionage is being run for some of these consulates.
All right, well, it's an interesting call that we should be sending some of these staff back, so we might put that to the government ultimately. Recession about to be confirmed. Is the government talking to you about any sort of bold economic reform, trying to ready the crossbench to get perhaps even controversial measures passed?
Well, unfortunately, the government hasn't taken a visionary approach in any of this. They should be looking at things like directing government procurement at the local economy. They should be looking at manufacturing and resilience, and things like value adding. We should be talking about increasing R&D, looking at ways in which to increase our tax base. We've got 221 companies that over 5 years of tax transparency data earned $850 billion in revenue and paid no tax. So we need to be doing things that are bold, not tinkering around with industrial relations, as seems to be the government a leopard that hasn't
Right,
changed
or
its spots.
superannuation. Any more conversations with the government on delaying super and anything that's convinced you as yet?
No, they haven't been focusing on that. No conversations have been taking place in background. Look, the government says that it's working through the National COVID Commission, but of course that's all inappropriately, in my view, secret under the National Cabinet arrangements. There is no plan, and that's part of the problem. We dealt with JobKeeper yesterday as a response package instead of integrating that into some plan moving forward to rebuild Australia, to rebuild our resilience.